shirt on Teespring.
On May 4th, 2025, the world did a double-take. Donald Trump, in a move straight out of a rejected Hollywood pitch, declared his intention to reopen Alcatraz. Not as a museum, mind you, but as a maximum security prison. It was a declaration as audacious as it was baffling, a plan seemingly hatched not in the halls of government, but perhaps during a Shawshank Redemption binge. Trump's vision for Alcatraz is clear, a holding pen for America's most ruthless and violent offenders. Forget supermax prisons in Colorado or Florence. Trump wants the baddest of the bad shipped to an island fortress off the coast of San Francisco. It's a move designed to shock, to awe, to send a message. Whether that message is deterrence or desperate cry for attention remains to be seen. This isn't just about locking people up, it's about symbolism. Alcatraz, the inescapable prison, is meant to become a monument to Trumpian law and order. Never mind the practicalities, the logistics, the sheer insanity of it all. Trump, a man who built his career on defying expectations and occasionally common sense, has set his sights on Alcatraz. Buckle up, America, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Let's talk about money, shall we? Because reopening Alcatraz wouldn't be cheap. In fact, it would make even the most extravagant government boondoggle look like a bargain bin find. You see, Alcatraz has one major logistical drawback. It's an island, a small, rocky island in the middle of San Francisco Bay. This geographical quirk means that everything, and I mean everything, needs to be shipped in. Food, water, medical supplies, guards who hopefully aren't afraid of boats. It all needs to be ferried across the bay, day in and day out. And let's not forget about the prisoners themselves. Transferring high-security inmates to and from the Rock would be a logistical nightmare, requiring Coast Guard escorts, armored transports, and enough paperwork to make a bureaucrat weep. Remember, we're not talking about shoplifters here. These are supposed to be the most dangerous criminals in America. The cost? Astronomical. Studies have shown that housing an inmate at Alcatraz would be 3 times more expensive than at a mainland facility. 3 times, and that's before we even get to the renovations. Speaking of renovations, Alcatraz isn't exactly in move-in condition. Sure, it looks spooky and atmospheric in the postcards, but those crumbling walls and rusty bars don't scream humane incarceration. In fact, they scream potential lawsuit waiting to happen. Decades of neglect and salty sea air have taken their toll. The plumbing is shot, the electrical grid is outdated, and the whole place is about as structurally sound as a Jenga tower after a stiff breeze. We're talking millions, if not billions of dollars in repairs just to make it habitable, let alone secure. Then there's the issue of security. Remember, this was a prison designed to hold some of the most notorious criminals of the 20th century. Al Capone did time here, for crying out loud. Modern security standards require things like high-tech surveillance systems, motion sensors, and enough razor wire to make a porcupine jealous. And let's not forget about earthquake proofing. This is California, after all, where the ground has a tendency to shake things up a bit. Retrofitting Alcatraz to withstand a major earthquake would be a monumental and monumentally expensive undertaking. Let's be generous and assume for a moment that Trump somehow manages to overcome the logistical and financial hurdles of reopening Alcatraz. He pours billions into renovations, builds a high-tech ferry service, and figures out how to earthquake-proof an island. What then? He's still left with a prison that can hold at most a few hundred inmates. That's right, a few hundred. In a country with a prison population exceeding 1.2 million, Alcatraz would be a drop in the ocean. A symbolic gesture with negligible impact on the actual problem of mass incarceration. And let's not forget about the current state of the US prison system. We're not exactly facing a shortage of prison beds. In fact, many facilities are operating below capacity due to budget cuts and a shrinking inmate population, a trend Trump seems determined to reverse. So we're spending billions to reopen a notoriously expensive and impractical prison, all to house a tiny fraction of the inmate population we already have plenty of space for. Brilliant, just brilliant. Section 5, Environmental Roadblocks on the Rock. Even if we ignore the financial and logistical nightmares, there's another major obstacle standing in the way of Trump's Alcatraz fantasy: the environment. You see, Alcatraz isn't just a former prison. It's also a national park. a haven for wildlife, and a site of historical significance. Reopening it as a prison would require navigating a minefield of environmental regulations, starting with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. This law mandates a thorough review of any project that could impact the environment, which, in the case of Alcatraz, is pretty much everything. We're talking about impact studies on everything from noise pollution and water quality to air quality and traffic. And let's not forget about the birds. Alcatraz is a major nesting ground for numerous species of migratory birds, some of which are endangered. Construction noise and increased boat traffic could disrupt their breeding patterns, leading to a whole other set of legal challenges. And then there's the issue of waste disposal. Where do you put the sewage from hundreds of inmates when you're on a tiny island in the middle of a bay? Dumping it into the bay is definitely not an option. Not that that would stop the Trump administration, but I digress. Section 6. A landmark decision, history versus prison. Alcatraz isn't just any old island, it's a national historic landmark, a designation that comes with a whole host of restrictions. These restrictions are designed to preserve the island's historical integrity, which, might be a tad difficult when you're converting it into a 21st century supermax prison. Imagine, if you will, the outcry from historians, preservationists, and anyone who's ever seen a documentary about Alcatraz. Imagine the lawsuits, the protests, the endless op-eds bemoaning the destruction of a national treasure. And what about the tourists? Every year, millions of people visit Alcatraz, drawn by its eerie history and stunning views. Turning it back into a prison would effectively kill that industry, costing San Francisco millions in tourism revenue. Of course, none of that matters to Trump. He's never been one to let a little thing like history stand in the way of his grand ambitions, but it's a factor that can't be ignored, a legal and logistical hurdle that could tie the project up in court for years. Section 7, California pushes back. Not in our backyard. Let's not forget about the small matter of local opposition. Because if there's one thing Californians hate more than traffic, it's the federal government telling them what to do with their landmarks. And when it comes to Alcatraz, the state of California has made its position abundantly clear: not in our backyard. California officials, from Governor Newsom to local activists, have denounced the plan as absurd, deeply unhinged, and an attack on the rule of law. They argue that reopening Alcatraz would be a logistical nightmare, an environmental disaster, and a colossal waste of taxpayer money, and they're not just going to sit back and let it happen. California has a long history of fighting the Trump administration on everything from immigration to environmental policy. Reopening Alcatraz would be seen as a direct assault on the state's autonomy, triggering a legal battle that could drag on for years. The state could refuse to grant permits, challenge the environmental impact statements, and generally make life difficult and expensive for the federal government. It would be a political and legal quagmire, a battle that Trump is unlikely to win. Section 8. From park rangers to prison guards, here's a fun logistical wrinkle. Alcatraz isn't currently under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Prisons. It's managed by the National Park Service, an organization known more for its friendly park rangers than its hardened correctional officers. Transferring management of Alcatraz back to the Bureau of Prisons would be a bureaucratic nightmare, requiring acts of Congress, interagency agreements, and enough paperwork to choke a horse. And then there's the issue of staffing. The Bureau of Prisons is already facing staffing shortages nationwide. Who's going to staff a maximum security prison on a remote island with a notoriously high cost of living? The answer, of course, is nobody wants to. Finding qualified correctional officers willing to work on Alcatraz would be like finding a vegan who loves working in a slaughterhouse. It's not going to happen. Section 9. Alcatraz, a symbol, not a solution. Let's face it, Trump's Alcatraz plan is a terrible idea. It's impractical, it's expensive, and it's environmentally disastrous. It's a logistical nightmare wrapped in a political firestorm, a monument to ego over common sense. But more importantly, it's a distraction, a shiny object designed to divert attention from the real issues plaguing the American justice system: mass incarceration, racial disparities, and a lack of investment in rehabilitation programs. Reopening Alcatraz wouldn't make America safer. It wouldn't deter crime or rehabilitate offenders. It would simply be a costly and cruel symbol of a broken system. So, let's leave Alcatraz to the birds, the tourists, and the ghosts of prisoners past. Let it serve as a reminder of the failures of our justice system, not a blueprint for its future.